Hey guys, so welcome to your second video of the energy chapter. And so we've already talked about how energy is transferred when we looked at food chains. And so basically we have autotrophs and heterotrophs. Autotrophs are the individuals or the organisms, that make their own food through a process called photosynthesis. So in this lesson, we're going to talk about photosynthesis and how all of that actually happens within plants. And so I want you to focus on a couple of things, thinking how is energy used and how is energy created in this video. And as we continue on, we're going to know that we need certain things in order for plants to be useful for heterotrophs. After this video, you should be able to outline the stages of photosynthesis, describe the chloroplast and its role in photosynthesis, describe the Calvin cycle, and finally, define chemiosynthesis. I lied, you're actually not doing that last one. I forgot to take that out of the slide. So we've all heard of the term photosynthesis, and basically you know that photosynthesis is the process of an organism making its own food. But there is a lot more that goes into it than just eating the sun, if you'll ever hear that. There's a lot more. So we're not just necessarily eating the sun. We're taking that sun energy, the energy from the sun, and we're converting it to usable energy known as chemical energy. From chemical energy, we get certain byproducts, and that is what's going on here. You need to also be aware that not only does photosynthesis create the energy necessary for all life on Earth, it also creates oxygen, which is super necessary for us as humans. So bear in mind that there's multiple things going on here, not just the concept of energy being passed and transformed. All right, so a brief synopsis of photosynthesis is basically it happens in two stages, and it happens in two different places, but both of these things are going to happen inside of what's known as the chloroplast, and we'll talk about that in the next slide. But there's two stages. One is known as the light reactions. So if it's called light reactions, it probably requires light. So in this stage, we actually need light. We need the sunlight in this particular stage. This is where we use water and change light energy from the sun into chemical energy stored in ATP and a molecule known as NADPH. There's a lot of long words here. The acronyms are actually acronyms for a lot longer words, but you don't need to know the longer words. What you do need to know is that the light reactions is using light energy to make some products such as ATP and NADPH. The light reactions and the Calvin cycle work together in order to produce glucose. So you can't have one without the other. You definitely need both of these reactions to happen. So if a plant did not undergo the Calvin cycle, it would not survive because it would not be able to produce glucose. If the light reactions didn't happen, then we wouldn't be able to capture that sunlight in order to make the next cycle go. So both of these are definitely required. For stage 2, this is also known as the Calvin cycle. Bear in mind, cycle. Cycle means that it repeats itself and repeats itself. So as long as we have the proper stuff, it will continue to go on. Stage 2 happens right after stage 1. And basically it takes the products from stage 1 and uses them along with carbon dioxide to actually make glucose. So there's a lot of stuff going on here. I am going to provide pictures to you. We are going to label the steps in those pictures. So please be aware that we are going to go through this baby step by baby step. This is probably one of our hardest chapters. I don't want you to feel super overwhelmed because, again, we will go through this together pretty slowly. Before we can talk about those two stages, though, I wanted to take some time to talk to you about some different components and some different areas that photosynthesis happens at. So hopefully you know that photosynthesis happens within plants, but where exactly does it happen within plants? It actually happens in the leafy area. So in the leafy area, there are some multiple structures that are responsible for this cycle. So both stages of photosynthesis occur in what's known as the chloroplasts, and chloroplasts are located in our leaves of our plants. Each chloroplast contains neat stacks called grana. Grana are basically, I want you to think of them like a stack of pancakes. So grana is like a stack of pancakes, and each one of those stacks is called a thylakoid. So the grana is the stack of those thylakoids. And within those thylakoids, those things have what's called photosystems. And this is where light is actually captured within the thylakoid membrane. So that's where the light reaction stage happens, within the grana in the chloroplast. The Calvin cycle occurs on what's known as the stroma. So the stroma is the outside area of the chloroplast. So if we have the chloroplast, you can think of it as like a pill, and I'm going to give you a picture of this, so please don't worry if you can't imagine this. I'm going to try and draw it the best I can, but you can think of it as like a pill. Inside that pill, we have these tiny little stacks, and they're supposed to be all stacked on top of each other, but it's okay. This whole stack is known as a grana. So this whole stack is known as a grana. Each individual pancake, if you will, if you think of it as a pancake stack, each individual stack is known as a thylakoid. The thylakoids have what's called photosystems, and those photosystems is how we actually capture light. So each one of those is capturing light and helping the light reaction stage happen. I wanted to provide this slide before we started talking about the stages, so that way you're able to hopefully put a little bit of a picture behind all of this. Please be aware, the central location, or the location for all of photosynthesis, both stage 1 and stage 2, is the chloroplast. But within the chloroplast, there's specific areas on where stage 1 happens versus stage 2. All right, stage 1. So you don't have a lot of words on your screen, but we're going to talk about this picture, and this is the picture I am going to give you in class. This is stage 1, known as the light reaction stage. Couple of things to bear in mind. We are located in the thylakoid of the chloroplast. There's a lot of words on your screen right now. Don't focus on the words. Just focus on what I am saying. Don't let this picture overwhelm you, because it's really all we're doing is we're capturing light and we're creating some stuff. And I know that's very simplistic, but just go with me. So step 1 of stage 1, so the light reaction stage, we're requiring light. So we know we need some light. So here's my light. I'm going to go ahead and put a step 1 right here. Oops. I'm going to go ahead and put a step 1 right here. Light is coming in to this blue pill looking thing. That blue pill looking thing is known as photosystem 2. I already told you that photosystems are located on thylakoids, and those are responsible for capturing light. So in photosystem 2, light hits the photosystem. And what happens is when light hits, that's a lot of energy. You can think of like a stovetop. When you turn it on and you have a pot of water on there, the water is probably going to start getting really hot because the stove is on. Same idea here. So if I'm striking this photosystem with light, there are things inside of that are going to get pretty excited. So light hits photosystem 2, and it hits the electrons in there, and those electrons become very excited. When things get excited, they want to move around. They don't want to just sit around. So they're going to be going ahead and doing something. But for the time being, we're going to go ahead and take a step back. Notice again that the light hits the photosystem, but we got some action going on down here as well, right here underneath the photosystem. So what is going on there? So while the light energy hits the photosystem, we also have light splitting up water. So light has come in, and now light is splitting up water. So this is step 2 in your notes. Step 2. And technically, step 1 and step 2 are happening at the same time. So we could say 1A and 1B, but I think 1 and 2 look better. That's just my own personal preference. But again, light strikes. We have created some excited electrons. We've also split some water. In this portion, this is a very important portion, because when we split water, we get to split hydrogen from oxygen. And when you split hydrogen from oxygen, you create oxygen gas. And oxygen gas is very good for us. That is a byproduct of the plant. The plant doesn't need oxygen gas, so it just gets rid of it. It just literally farts out oxygen, and that is what we breathe. So we are essentially breathing plant farts. But let's get back to the excited electrons that are in the photosystem too. So those excited electrons need to go somewhere. So rather than sit around, they get on a train. That train is known as the electron transport train, and that is this that green line there. That is known as the electron transport chain. They are constantly moving down that chain. So that is step 3. Just like all trains, they need to make a stop somewhere. So what it's going to do, it's going to go ahead and stop at this next purple pill-looking thing. And this pill-looking thing looks like it's taking in some light energy. Guess what that's called? That's called photosystem 1. Photosystem 1 is taking in some energy, but believe it or not, when you ride on a train for a very long time, just like these electrons have done, you get a little tired, so you may need a little nap. So they're no longer excited, but that's okay because they're stopping at photosystem 1 and photosystem 1 is going to provide them with more light to get them more excited. So it's like stopping at the train station and getting some coffee, and guess what? You're awake again. So that's what's happening here. In step 4, electrons reach photosystem 1 and they get light from photosystem 1 that helps them continue down with this chain. So in step 4, we're right here, we get more light. Those electrons keep moving. They're going to move a little bit longer and they're eventually going to reach what's called NAD+. NAD+, that's this guy here. And NAD+ is just a molecule that needs another friend. So the electrons are going to tag in and they're going to hang out with this friend and they're going to create what's known as NADPH. In step 5, we create NADPH. So that's some fun stuff. And that NADPH on this picture is circled to show you. So basically all that's happening is light is getting things excited. It's moving electrons down a train to get to a molecule. So it's like getting to the other side. It's walking down the hallway to get to its friend known as NAD+, NADP+, and then NADP+, plus electrons gives you NADPH. Now, bear in mind that there are some other factors going on here that we are going to not necessarily ignore, but we're not going to necessarily go into detail on. What I want you to understand, though, is that for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. So because we had those electrons moving down that train, we created a lot more hydrogens. And you'll see here, this is a hydrogen. And basically, all I want you to know for step 6 is that we make ATP. We make ATP because we have extra stuff from those electrons moving. You don't need to know any more than that, but in step 6, we make ATP. So here are the things that we got out of the light reactions. We got ATP, NADPH, and we got O2. Oxygen gas has already left. It's gone. It's in the atmosphere for us to breathe. NADPH and ATP will move on to the next stage of photosynthesis in order for the Calvin cycle to happen. Just like in the last picture, there are a lot of words here. Don't focus on the words so much. Just focus on what we're talking about. That way, when we come to class, we can go ahead and break this down a little bit more. But I'm going to make these as simple as possible. There's 3 steps to the Calvin cycle. Remember, the Calvin cycle cannot happen until the stage 1, or also known as the light reactions, happens. So in stage 1, we have moved from the thylakoid membrane to what's known as the stroma. So outside of that thylakoid membrane, we've moved to the stroma. We have taken with us ATP and NADPH. And these guys, excuse me, I just yawned. These guys are going to do some stuff for us. But before those guys do anything, I want you to understand that heterotrophs and autotrophs work together. So remember when I told you that plants make oxygen gas, and we need that to breathe. We are not plants. We need oxygen gas. But guess what we breathe out? We breathe out carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide gas is necessary for plants to do photosynthesis. Beautiful relationship. So here's where we actually use the carbon dioxide. So what's going to happen? Carbon dioxide is going to become fixated. And basically what that means is we're going to take carbon dioxide, we're going to meet it with a friend, and then that friend is going to create a baby. So carbon dioxide is going to combine with RUBP. Again, a big fancy name that you really don't need to know. And that step is found right here. So in step 1, we have RUBP that meets up with a friend. Now, typically, when 2 people meet and start dating, a lot of times a friend hooks them up. In this case, our friend is known as Rubisco. So our carbon dioxide and RUBP meet because of a mutual friend known as Rubisco. Rubisco, nice little helper there, comes in the clutch. Well, carbon dioxide and RUBP form such a good relationship that they actually create a baby. This baby is known as 3GP. 3GP. So from 3GP, the baby's going to grow up, it's going to live its life. Now, just like all babies, 3PG ends up finding some friends. Those friends are known as NADPH and ATP. And just like all friends, they help influence who we become, they help change who we are, and 3PG decides, I think I'm going to start changing who I am. I'm going to start changing my hair color. I'm going to dress a little different. So because of NADPH and ATP, 3PG then becomes a new person known as G3P. So just a rearrangement of those letters. And then that G3P, super necessary, because what happens is we actually use that to make glucose. So some of that G3P goes on to make glucose. Others of it go on to repeat the cycle. So then some G3P meets up with ATP to make RUBP to continue the cycle over. This is probably the most frustrating cycle because there are so many letters. And that's what I think most students get very frustrated with. So please don't let that discourage you. We are going to talk about this super slow. I'm going to go through this in class and give you some more examples, and hopefully it becomes a little more clear. But that is the end of the Calvin cycle. So at the end of this cycle, we have created glucose. This is what we want, glucose. Glucose is chemical energy necessary for the plant to feed itself. And that is for the photosynthesis. Remember, plants go on to provide all of the energy necessary for every single organism on the planet. I realize that I said a lot of stuff today, like a lot in this video. So please, if you are super confused, if you don't understand, leave me questions so that I know how to teach this better to you. This is a very confusing concept. We will spend quite a bit of time on this, so don't worry if you're still very hesitant on this. Ask me anything on Edpuzzle. Thanks.